Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the A Brighter Day Outreach podcast. My name is Beverly Knox Davis, and I am so happy that you have made the decision to join us today to be with us to learn even more about what's going on here in the Hoskins community and beyond. Today, we have the esteemed guest. Miss LaWana Mayfield, City Councilwoman at Large. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me to the podcast. It's important to get in community to know what's going on.
Absolutely. So we're just excited today to be able to share some more information. So today we wanted to have you on as one of our city representatives just to share so that the people understand what's going on and we stay connected and, let them know the real, and that's what I get a lot. So I just want to know the truth about what's going on. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
So let's back up just a little bit. Who is LaWana Mayfield?
That's an interesting question because personally, I feel like I'm an open book for as long as I've been in the community, but I grew up in Miami, in Dade County. Okay. Grew up in a two-parent household, spoiled rotten, daddy's little girl. He couldn't even go to the mailbox without me throwing on shoes to run out behind him. Unfortunately, when I was younger, my father passed away unexpectedly when I was 13. And then, adults didn't really talk to children too much, but by 15, we had learned, and my mom shared that she had been battling cancer. And back during that time, and unfortunately still today, there are cases where the treatment causes more damage than the actual illness. So the chemo created a lot of challenges. So she was gone by the age of 15. So by 17, I was out on my own, came to visit Charlotte in 1988. Back then, it was not nearly as hot as it is today. Back then, we actually had all four seasons. We had snow, we had fall, and it was around fall time that I visited, and that was honestly the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, the leaves changing colors. And as an 18-year-old, even though I grew up in Miami, visiting the Carolinas, it was just beautiful, all the greenery that I saw, and I decided that this was going to be home.
Wow, I love that. And I'm so sorry for your loss, but I know, it has made you who you are today.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Probably a lot more outspoken than people would like.
Well, I love it because I like a real person that tells me the truth, and that's what you're going to get here. So what led you to go into this political government arena?
Right. That is an interesting path, I would say. Honestly, I did a lot of volunteer work. Like, as you can imagine, I had a lot of anger. I was mad at God. I was mad at the world. I felt like, okay, you can at least leave me one of them. Like, I needed to navigate life on my own. But honestly, years ago, I think it was like 1990-ish, I was flipping through the local paper and there was an ad where they needed third shift volunteers for then what was called the Lesbian Gay Suicide Hotline. And it was actually housed out of the Varnador building, the big building off of Independence. And we saw that that third shift was the hours where a lot of people had the most pain. So I went through the training, and that honestly kicked off me realizing that I actually found joy and peace out of helping other people. So that became part of my path. Like, I've always worked. I have like 20 something years of background in accounting and bookkeeping and a lot of different things, but I realized that I can have a voice in community. So I did a lot of specialized training. I'm an actual trained grassroots community organizer. I led a program here in Charlotte through grassroots leadership. I was their first ever Charlotte Mecklenburg coordinator, and I had the chance working with Cy Khan, who is one of the original members of SNCC, to actually create a program, and I focused on alternatives to incarceration, immigration reform, pushing for us not to have 287G implemented here, and fighting against for-profit private prisons, but a lot of years of volunteering in the community, on the ground, issues of housing, which we still face today.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is not anything new. I actually was part of the group that helped to write the language in partnership with attorney James Ferguson and his law firm, as well as Isaac Sturgill when he worked for legal aid. We wrote the language that years later, when I was elected to office, became ban the box, because we got it passed on the county side, but the city was always hesitant. So in my first term, we were able to do that to help those formerly incarcerated to actually get an opportunity, because you made a mistake that you paid for 25, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 18 years ago. But we're still giving you a challenge to get a job, to get housing. So we want you stuck and dependent on the system and not get to the point of self-sufficiency. So I think all of the community work, I had members reach out, and I'm going to blame Connie Vetter forever, who's a local attorney here, because one of the organizations I volunteered for at the time, MetPAC, we were honestly looking for someone in the LGBTQIA plus community to run for office. I was on the search committee, but you know how it works when you have friends who are others. They have a side meeting that you don't know nothing about. So when after our meeting, they had a side meeting, and in there I was nominated, even though I was on the search committee back in 2011, and it was all very quick because we had the conversation, I think, in like March. In May, I went to my very first training about politics, because that wasn't my path. I was used to being at the podium pushing for legislation, and went through a training, had elections that year. I was thinking, okay, I'm running for a district seat, District 3, against a 4-term incumbent who's a Charlotte native. I'll get my name out there. Well, the community came out overwhelmingly and supported, and it's like, so that really wasn't the plan. The plan was like to run, test the waters, and then they actually elected me and kept me in for 8 years. I ran in 2019 at large around a lot of controversy, because I was calling out police and their impacts on our communities and other things, because some people get this idea that once you're elected, you no longer have an individual thought.
My Lord.
And that you're only supposed to say what people want to hear. And I never subscribed to that. So I did not win. Thankfully, let God do what God's going to do, because then we had a whole pandemic. But I continued volunteering. I continued showing up. I continued with the organizations that I was a part of, and continuing to do the work that I loved and that I feel God called me for. Community members were like, why'd you leave us? I'm like, why didn't you vote? But hey. Right. They said, I was like, okay, you want me to run again? I will put myself out there. They came out again, brought me back in, this time as an at-large member. So now it's a total of about 11 and a half years that I have served in political office, either as a district rep and now as an at-large member.
Wow. I can recall all of those stages, and I was always Team You, because I love people that are their authentic self. And you always put that out there, like, you know what? There might be some people mad at me, but that's okay. I'm still going to speak my truth. And I always pick that up anytime I ever saw you on the media or just out and about, just your authentic self.
And I think it means something if you say you represent the community, but then when you have a position of power and you have the position where your vote is impacting people, you forget the people that helped you get there. That's a challenge. So I remember during the beginning years, I would be questioned quite often, am I an activist or am I an elected? And I'm like, yes. Because it makes no sense for me to now have this position, but forget all the work that I had done in the community to help people. You're not going to agree with everything.
That's right.
Nor should you. That's a cult. We are now living under the impact of this nation of a cult. I don't need the cult of LaWana. You don't have to agree with every decision, but I feel like I should be able to have a conversation with you, whether it's next week or a couple of years from now, why I landed, where I landed on a vote. Because I take the time to actually do the research and look at the impact and try to consider the impact of my yes or my no on community. I'm not as concerned with those coming to the city. I'm a transplant. I'm not interested in Charlotte looking like Miami. or looking like every other city USA. What made Charlotte beautiful and made us this area based on location, air quality, environment, a lot of that has changed, and it's changed because of the decisions that local political electeds have made, whether they served one term or more. Their decisions have created what we're seeing today. Our
Absolutely.
decisions.
Absolutely. I know in this area, I mean, this is District 2, and we've had a lot of concerns about, having the proper representation. It's no secret. I mean, you come to any of our community meetings just like you did, and you heard it. And it's just important for the community to feel supported. I got a lot of great feedback with having you there at that meeting. So would love to see you join us as much as you possibly can. I know we compete a lot of times with it being on a Tuesday evening. That's when everybody want to have their community meetings. But it meant a lot to those that live here in the Hoskins community to have you here to support us. We've had a laundry list of things that have been provided to our leadership for District 2, and we haven't heard anything in years. And so they're like, well, what about this and that and the other? But you have acted upon everything that you said that evening, has even had a one-on-one with me to, address some real concerns that I had about funding and being able to do some things here in this area. So I'm very appreciative of that. So thank you so much. That goes back to being your authentic self.
Thank you.
And doing exactly what you say you're going to do.
But honestly, that's our job.
Yes.
When we knock on your doors and we say that we want to represent you, understand I have to look at the collective. Mm-hmm. I won't run an issue that is specific to one individual. I need you to work with your neighbors. I need you to get to know your neighbors. I need you to have an organized neighborhood association. I need you all to come together collectively, because I can scream from the mountaintop, but it gives me what I need when the community is pushing us to do our job. But the other side of that is we have elections every 2 years. We all have choices on the ballot.
That is very
every
true.
2 years. And unfortunately, we have more people that do not vote than those that engage. And I'm hoping that people are waking up, and you're seeing it across the nation with a lot of midterm elections, because you had a lot of people that set out in November. Now, even though that's on the federal level, that's impacting us every day. That is federal services and funding that has been eliminated, entire departments that have been eliminated, individuals that receive subsidies or receive any type of government assistance has been eliminated. Funding for nonprofits that work directly with the communities have been eliminated. They're pushing more and more responsibility down the states, but we're paying taxes to everyone. So what are our taxes going for? It went for someone to throw themselves an empty birthday party because the nation was out protesting. Now, you're not going to see me out there protesting. No. I did my part. I am that video. I am that poster where you see the sister sitting on the side of the wall sipping tea, because we told y'all what was going to happen.
Everybody should have known.
And they were like, I don't see the difference between, okay, well, you see a difference now. So hopefully people will come out and recognize that some of us are actually out here trying to fight for neighborhoods to maintain their autonomy, and for residents to truly have a voice versus having to just deal with whatever someone brings to them.
Absolutely. I saw you not too long ago, and I reached out to Pastor Edwards up at Hoskins Avenue Baptist Church to bridge the gap. I'm like, I need you to hear this from a whole different perspective on how to bring funding through your church, through faith-based institutes. And so I know that you've started this initiative, I believe it was last year?
Yes, so the mayor did announce, and actually it really started in 2023 through the Crown Realtors, and which is the African American arm of the Charlotte Realtors Association. They had been doing work across the nation through the Kojic, where they were already reaching out to religious institutions, and they had their conference here in 2023, and leadership had a chance to talk with the mayor. I had a chance to meet the president at the time of the Crown Realtors, and then had a chance to see them again in another state at an event that I was at. And Mayor Lyles announced an initiative. They hadn't named it, but it was going to be working directly with our religious institutions to expand with some of our churches like Mayfield Memorial and our Aunt Little Rock and others, where they had already started looking at land they owned and whether or not they should build housing, whether it's multifamily with a long-term lease or for a sale product. That gave the chance for us to create something new. And I worked directly with Warren Wooten, who's our assistant director in Housing and Neighborhood Services. And we actually came up with the name Faith in Housing.
I love the name.
There was conversation about faith and in, and I pushed that, first of all, words matter.
Yes.
And there's a difference between something being an and the impact of the word in.
Yes.
Between faith and housing, because it is a combination of our religious communities getting back to and expanding their core in neighborhoods, because a lot of people that attend churches don't live in the neighborhood. So you come in for that day or 2 days, but then you leave out.
That's right.
So how do we create the resources within? Because the community, if you have a feeding program, they're the ones that's coming and knocking on the door if they need immediate assistance. So how do we look at something greater? And from the city side, how do we create programming that will help you be comfortable having this conversation so that you don't have a developer that talks a good game and smiles the right way, and when all the contracts are signed, you just gave away your land that's worth a couple of $100,000, if not millions of dollars, and you have nothing to show for it. And they are now building something on your land that you have no connection to, no benefit from.
Right. That
But
has
it's
happened.
impacting you. It's happened a lot,
Yeah,
and that's something
it's
that's
happened
concerning.
right here in the Hoskins when I was, really upset. But at the same time, it's like, all right, let this be a lesson for the other churches in the area. There's a ton of churches all over Charlotte and even in this community. So I just thought the naming just resonated with me, because there's always been a divide between church and state. And they push that, well, we can't, do politics in church and all of that.
But the black church historically has always been the place. Because think about it. Every election year, we sit Sunday to be shored up and get what we need for the week ahead, or to refill us from the week that we just completed. But how many times do you think we are in non-black churches?
Right.
Do they allow us or invite us to come in to speak to their congregation? But we willingly invite people in, and they say the right things. But where's your scorecard? Where's the church scorecard on what have they actually done to help the community? Knowing we can't do everything that you want us to do, but what have we done to help the least of these to the best of our ability?
Yeah. And I think it's really sad, but you make a great point. And we see it each and every time, we get close to elections, we just fling the doors open, let them come all the way in the pulpit.
Yes. I've always had a challenge with that. I've always been, because my pastor does it too. I'm at St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church with Reverend Dr. Clifford Mathis, because my pastor went on ahead and got his doctorate from Duke University. I told him I'm going to forgive him for that choice, but whatever. When he pulls me up or calls, and because he never gives me a warning to let me know that I'm coming up to speak to something, and I'm like, can I stand down front? He's like, no. I was like, okay. So that is a sacred space. That is a sacred space, and I want us to treat it as the sacred space it is. And we need to have discernment, because even in today, we have to remember our history in order to understand where we're going. But that old adage, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, we got to recognize that everyone that may be melanated is not, we don't have the same goals.
Wow. I need her to say that again. We need something flashing back here saying
Right.
that
That's
because it's
it.
the
The all
truth.
skin folk and kin folk. That just needs to be scrolling at the bottom.
So one of the other things that we are really struggling with here, the homeless population has grown tremendously. All of a sudden, we noticed that there were more people living or in or around Eva B. Barber Park, which is just right up the road here. And I said, something happened. And I started asking questions of some of the new faces that I saw. And one individual spoke to me and said that they had been dropped off. And I was like, you mean like you took a bus here? I was trying to understand
From
the
out
whole.
of state.
Well, this particular person said from just another area of Charlotte to here. And I said, okay, you want to tell me a little bit more? And then they shut down. They didn't want to get in trouble about the drop off and we see what's happening. A lot of areas of Charlotte are being taken over completely, don't look anything like what I remember as a child. I mean, just last evening coming through the area by Johnson C. Smith, coming down State Street, which is where originally I started my life with my mom, and to see how different it is now. And I just wondered, I said, well, what is going on? And I did ask our District 2 representative, and it was a lot of dance in that discussion. And I didn't really understand it. I said, well, okay, let's just work with the people. We'll figure out what's going on and maybe try to get in front of it. So my thing is, what is the plan for the city? You may not even have an answer to this, but just in how people get moved around when it's time for the takeover to happen in certain areas of Charlotte.
So we have multiple pieces at play. So you have somewhat of this underground conversation that is picking up people and transferring them from one location or another. So you think about the large unhoused population in uptown Charlotte. That's visually, that's not a good look for business. So we don't know of these, I don't know of these groups that are out there picking people up, but I would equate it to what we have seen on the national level under this administration and previous, really within the Republican Party. Them putting people on buses, telling them one thing, and then shipping them across state lines, which is trafficking.
Yes.
As well as kidnapping, but
That's true.
the media doesn't want to call it that, and sending them someplace else and just dropping them off with no resources, no help, no assistance. So when we think about how we get ahead of it, it's difficult because at the same time that we have individuals who have experienced financial loss, we still have $7.25 on the books in North Carolina General Assembly as the minimum wage. If you're making $15, that company is doing above and beyond. Yet the latest study last week says you need, as a single individual, you need to earn $110,000 to
right. I saw that.
live
Like,
in the city of Charlotte. Mind you, that was $75,000 just 3 years ago.
wow.
So when we're looking at the cost of living, we also have to take in consideration people are moving here from much more expensive cities. So we are still relatively attractive regarding affordability. I am not a fan of the language affordable housing because affordable is subjective.
It is.
Your level of affordability isn't mine. Mine isn't necessarily
exactly
the
right.
next person's. So years ago, I said we needed to look at diverse price point housing, which was a very different thing. Because to me, a community that's concentrated on the lower income is just as unstable as a community that's all high wealth. Because when you lose that wealth, y'all walk away. So then we have abandoned houses and we see the impact of that. When we think about our unhoused community, again, you have those who lived here who've experienced challenges, but you also have people coming here with no family, no resources, coming here on buses. That Metro bus is one of the big ones. We've had an individual come down to the council meetings for years and make comments regarding the fact that they pick people up
Oh, wow.
off the street and brought them in. And I'm like, and what's the plan?
What happens once they
What are
get
you
here?
doing?
Yeah.
And then we have you on the street and you see those that are panhandling because you don't necessarily have the skill set to go into employment. So the city has put a lot of investments into partnering with organizations and nonprofits that specifically work with training. We funded the Urban League. We funded Goodwill. We create relationships with organizations that are actually doing that work and connecting them. We've expanded our hiring. I was just at a appreciation event for solid waste before meeting with you now. The assistant director over there specifically has hired individuals who were unhoused.
Wow.
And they are now on a very different path.
Yes.
They are getting to the path of sustainability because the system is set up to keep us dependent on it, which means you get to control our destiny. And the moment we step outside, then they can take that away. So that creates fear, which is not a healthy place to live in.
Absolutely.